Like any good doormat for Donald Trump, Jim Jordan has used his position as chair of the House Judiciary Committee to demand records of Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis' communication with DOJ officials. Jordan submitted a letter on August 24th, 10 days after Trump and his other 18 co-defendants were indicted in Fulton County, suggesting that Willis was interfering with the 2024 election by virtue of prosecuting Donald Trump. I'll get to the specifics of Jim Jordan's letter in a moment, but so as not to bury the lead here, today Fani Willis fired back at Jim Jordan, utterly burying him in the process. First of all, amid Jordan's accusations of interference, Fani Willis flipped the script, accusing him of interfering, noting in her letter that congressional power of inquiry is not unlimited, that Congress is not a law enforcement agency, which Jim Jordan seems to think it is, and that congressional investigations conducted solely for the personal aggrandizement of the investigators, or to punish those investigated, are indefensible, all of which fall under the umbrella of what Jim Jordan is doing right now. The fact is that Congress has no legal right to interfere in state criminal proceedings, which Jordan seems to think he can do. Willis goes further to note the actual Supreme Court precedent at play here. In United States v. Lopez, under our federal system, the states possess primary authority for defining and enforcing the criminal law, which of course Jim Jordan, as a member of the States' Rights Party, should know better than anyone. But I guess big government is okay when the people running big government are Republicans. Willis then goes on to take some direct shots at Jordan's ignorance, writing, "Chairman Jordan, I tell people often, deal with reality or reality will deal with you. It is time that you deal with some basic realities. A special purpose grand jury made up of everyday citizens investigated for 10 months and made recommendations to me. A further reality is that a grand jury of completely different Fulton County citizens found probable cause against the defendants named in the indictment for RICO violations and various other felonies. Face this reality, Chairman Jordan. The select group of defendants who you fret over in my jurisdiction are like every other defendant, entitled to no worse or better treatment than any other American citizen." She then struck back at each of his misguided Fox News talking points, like, for example, the idea that Trump should be immune to prosecution because, after all, he's running for president in the Republican Party. To which Willis responds, "Here is another reality you must face. Those who wish to avoid felony charges in Fulton County, Georgia, including violations of Georgia RICO law, should not commit felonies in Fulton County, Georgia. In this jurisdiction, every person is subject to the same laws and same process because every person is entitled to the same dignity and is held to the same standard of responsibility. Person's socioeconomic status, race, gender, sexual orientation, or political prominence does not entitle them to an exemption from that basic standard. The criminal defendant about which you express concern was fully aware of the existence of the criminal investigation being conducted by the Fulton County District Attorney's Office at the time he announced his candidacy for president. I have no doubt that many Americans are the subject of criminal investigations and prosecutions at any given moment. An announcement of a candidacy for elected office, whether President of the United States, Congress, or state or local office, is not and cannot be a bar to criminal investigation or prosecution. Any notion to the contrary is offensive to our democracy and to the fundamental principle that all people are equal before the law." Willis even took aim at Jordan's claim that her timing was purposefully intended to hurt Trump in the 2024 election, to which she lays out a full timeline of her investigation and why the trial will be starting in earnest the day before Super Tuesday. And did that investigation take a long time? Sure, but as she explains, it was rife with delays, like, for example, quote, "Rather than accept service of lawful subpoenas from the special purpose grand jury, multiple out-of-state witnesses chose to resist compliance and forced my office to litigate in multiple state and federal courts to obtain orders compelling their appearance. For example, Senator Lindsey Graham, the ranking minority member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, was a witness who refused to voluntarily comply and required my office to obtain a decision affirming his obligation to testify from the United States Supreme Court. That is but one example of the use of litigation by a witness to resist providing information to this investigation and to delay justice. As a result of the litigation necessary to overcome this resistance, the special purpose grand jury required 8 months to complete its investigation and was released in January 2023. It should be noted that this was 4 months before the expiration of their term on May 2nd, 2023. If you are sincerely interested in improving federal law, I encourage you to make it incumbent upon your congressional colleagues to cooperate with lawful investigations without requiring intervention by the highest court in the land. That would be a productive federal initiative. So if Jim Jordan is worried about all of these delays, he might want to take it up with people like Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who quite literally caused these delays. And I'll just include one more bit from Fani Willis' letter, where she pushes back against Jim Jordan's ignorance regarding Georgia's racketeering laws and the basics of criminal conspiracy law. Quote, "I explained to the public when announcing the indictment, the overt and predicate acts are included because the grand jury found probable cause that those acts were committed to advance the objectives of a criminal conspiracy to overturn the result of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. election. For a more thorough understanding of Georgia's RICO statute, its application, and similar laws in other states, I encourage you to read RICO State by State. As a non-member of the bar, you can purchase a copy for $249. I mean, my God, if Fani Willis violated Jim Jordan any further, Jordan would do what he usually does and just ignore it. And finally, Fani Willis goes on to offer some suggestions that might actually be worth the House's time, since they're apparently so interested in state-level prosecutions now. Like, for example, better compensation for victim witness advocates. Like, increased funding so that local prosecutors can investigate old rape kits that are still untested. Like, funding programs like the Credible Messengers program, which matches at-risk youth with adults who can mentor them. Like, for example, funding state crime labs to test drugs like fentanyl and firearms used in violent crimes in a timely manner. Of course, none of those are going to get Jim Jordan a 5-minute cable hit on Fox, so the likelihood of him advocating for federal funding spent on programs that would actually help people are slim to none. Unless, of course, one of them ultimately turns out to be beneficial to Donald Trump, in which case Jim Jordan would sell his firstborn to make sure it's funded. But hey, definitely not a cult. And look, the reason for these theatrics is obvious. It's so that Jim Jordan can go on national TV and do this.
3 questions, Sean. Did you coordinate with the Biden administration, the same administration who's indicted their general election opponent in D.C. and Miami already? Did you coordinate with them? Did you work with Jack Smith? Look at the same witnesses. Any coordination there? And did you use federal funds as part of this investigation? We asked these same questions of Alvin Bragg a few months ago, and he, in fact, did use American tax dollars to go after President Trump in Manhattan. And oh, by the way, Alvin Bragg sued us when we subpoenaed one of those prosecutors up there in Manhattan. He sued us. We went to court, and the court ruled for us. So we're going to be just as aggressive here. We're going to do it within the Constitution, but we are going to do our duty to get the answers the American people deserve for this ridiculous indictment that's taken place in Georgia.
And clearly, it's not about the facts, which Fani Willis made abundantly clear in her response. Had Jim Jordan bothered to do even 5 minutes of research, he'd have saved himself the embarrassment of this response by the Fulton County DA. But it was never about the facts. It was always about the narrative. Jim Jordan knows that his audience will never get access to the response by Fani Willis or any of the factual responses that she laid out, and that's by design. That's the benefit of a hermetically sealed media ecosystem where the only information that gets in or out has been specifically curated by partisan hacks whose sole goal is to help themselves, their brands, their fundraising, and of course, Donald Trump. That's exactly what Jim Jordan did here, but it didn't stop Fani Willis from embarrassing him in front of the rest of us. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.